Welcome everyone to our Women in Business Leadership series. It's also Women's Entrepreneurship Day and Global Entrepreneurship Week. I am so excited to visit with our guests tonight and to get to know all of you a little bit better too. Our event tonight is an exciting opportunity to meet Maha Abouelenein. Maha is a Minnesota State Mankato graduate. She's joining us from Minnesota today, where she was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago. She helps create value with communication strategies. She is a master storyteller. She works with Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. She's the Chief Value Officer and the Executive Vice President of Business Development for VaynerX. She has a podcast that we're going to talk about that you're going to want to listen to. And she's an entrepreneur with her own business, OC Organizational Consultants, that advises global companies and startups on marketing communications. Welcome, Maha.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that wonderful introduction. It's so good to be back. I wore my Minnesota State Mankato sweatshirt, but I'm realizing no one can see it. So you know that I'm just in full color and full gear. I went to school at the university for my undergraduate and my master's. So this is such a great moment for me to come back to speak to all of you today. And my dad was the dean of the business school for many, many, many years. So I lived on campus with my dad, sitting in his office while he graded papers and while he did office hours. So I love the university so much. It means so much to me. And I was born and raised in Mankato. So this is equally rewarding for me because it's my hometown.
That's awesome. I want all of you to be part of this conversation today. So you'll see in chat that there's a link to a Padlet. Padlet is just a little website that you can go to. It doesn't cost anything, and you can post little Post-it notes on there. So as you're listening to Maha and listening to our conversation today, you can post something that you find interesting. Hey, this podcast sounds like a great thing to listen to, or hey, that was a great point. You can also put questions in there if you'd like. You can also, of course, put questions in chat, and we will address those when we get to do a little bit more Q&A. The password on the Padlet, by the way, is Maha, capital M-A-H-A. Can't talk. So this is the last in a series that's called Women in Business Leadership. It's for women thinking about business as a way to achieve their goals, whatever those might be. As we see today, we're going to have some students here. We're going to have some folks from the community. When you were in college, did you explore multiple majors, and did you see yourself as a business person back then, Maha?
Actually, I did. My undergraduate was in international business and marketing, and my minor was in French. So I did a double major, and I did want to explore different things just because when you're in college, you don't really know what you want to do. So you need to taste everything. You need to see what's out there. You need to try different courses. It was terrible at numbers and accounting. And like, I took economics courses and statistics classes, and I did terrible. So I'm like, okay, numbers aren't for me in that part of business, but I do love the management side, the marketing side, the understanding the business side without getting to the numbers. So it's not for everybody. So you need to take lots of courses, think about different majors to figure out what's right for you.
That's great. Hey, let's see who's here today. Like I said, I want to try and keep this interactive. So I've got two questions for all of you that are on the call. And you can respond in the poll in Zoom. Are you a college student? And what is your major or your area of work if you're not a college student? I think it might be interesting for Maha and for all of us to see who's here. You do not get to respond to the poll because you're a co-host. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it is.
Lots of college students, which is great. And your major is business, which is awesome.
Lots of majors.
Good to see lots of different, even engineering, science, arts, and humanities. That's terrific.
We have about 50 people here today. Here, I'll share the results with everyone so that you can see.
Amazing.
There you are.
Good. This will make my dad proud.
Yeah. So I was fascinated by VaynerX and Gary V, and you work with him. And I think that was fascinating. Could you talk a little bit about your work with VaynerX and how you came to work with him?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had never heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. I was in Dubai and I came home for the summer. I always come home to Minnesota for the summers. My sister's here, my family, and my friends like, you got to read this book called Crush It. It's a very small green book, easy to read. So I went to the bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and bought it. I read the book. I was like fascinated with Gary's story and how he was telling everybody, like, if you are passionate about something, if you have an expertise in something, then you should create a personal brand for yourself. You should really think about how you can put your expertise and your value out into the world. And I'm like, well, I've been doing communications for a long time. And I know I worked for Netflix and Google and all these big companies. I know a lot about communications and had different experiences with different companies. So I should create some sort of a platform to start to like share my expertise and give out education and help people understand more about communications. So like anybody else, after I read the book, I started following Gary. I started like absorbing his content. If you guys, I don't know if you saw him today, what happened, but Gary puts out a lot of content, so I can't necessarily watch every single piece. But I did see him do an interview with a woman named Cy Wakeman, who was writing a book. Fascinated by this interview, just kind of DM'd her and I said, listen, I love your work. I'd love to see you speak. I'd love to bring you out to the Middle East. I had no speaking events. I didn't book people for speaking events, but I just loved her story and I thought it'd be really fun for people to hear her story. Very long story short, I got her a speaking gig in Egypt. She came to Cairo. She spent like a magical week. Like she did speaking and workshops and met lots of people. And she had a videographer with her. And that videographer worked for VaynerMedia. And his name was Matt Legati. And so I said, Matt, I really want to meet Gary. And I want to meet somebody's company. I think Gary should open up offices in the Middle East. We should open Vayner in the Middle East. So he's like, I'll connect you to his head of business development at the time. And so he met me and then he said, well, can you stay an extra day? I went to New York. Can you meet Gary? So I ended up meeting Gary and I told him, I said, I think you guys should be in the Middle East. And he's like, I've never been to the Middle East and I don't know the market, but like educate us about the industry and where you see our business fitting in the Middle East. So for a year, I sat there and just built relationships with people in the company. Several people from Vayner came out to Dubai, just volunteering for Gary to give out free information about the region. Why does it matter? What's a good entryway for his business? Just adding value, adding value, adding value, and just building a relationship with him over time. And then we spent a lot of time together. We ended up going on a couple different business trips together just to get to know each other more personally. And then he said, okay, if I'm going to do business in the region, I need to come. Can you give me a speaking gig in Dubai or in the Middle East so I can come see the region? Because it's one thing to like describe Minnesota, but you have to go there to experience it. And the same goes for anywhere else. So we got him a speaking gig to come to Dubai. He came, he spoke, he did like to like a throng of supporters. Gary is very popular in the Middle East as well. Did some press, met some CEOs, just like had a really, really good business trip and really kind of understood how the region works and a little bit about the people and got to see what I do in my communications and how do I handle senior executives and how do I add value through building relationships. So I just basically had spent all of 2018 just basically working for free, helping him learn more about me, more about the region, showing my value to him. And then at that time he said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, actually I have a consulting firm, I do communications. And so he became a client of VaynerMedia and I started working with him and traveling with him and working on his business and helping not just his personal brand, but just how can I add value to the company. And so that's kind of how the story with me and Gary got started. You can see what we did in Dubai. There's a whole 7 or 8 hour vlog about the trip from beginning to end on his YouTube channel. And then I interviewed him for my podcast. So you can see that interview as well. We recorded that when we were in Australia.
I happened to listen to that podcast, and I have to say, he said at one point, he was so glowing, in his discussion about you and his very specific types of praise that he had. But I loved the thing that he said that if he were starting a new company today, there's 2 people he'd want to start it with, and you're one of them. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. I really, really, really learned so much from him. He teaches me a lot about like leadership can be, you don't have to be, a tough person to lead. You can really be empathetic and kind and how he puts people first. today was his birthday party, and they had all these people for 2 hours, all these significant guests come in and tell stories about Gary. And it's really interesting to see what people say about you. And consistently everyone said the leadership was all about kindness and empathy. And he doesn't just say it in his videos, he actually leads that way.
How has working with him changed you and how you run your company in any way?
Well, it's interesting because my consulting firm, I do communications for CEOs and for companies. And, you know, the more time I spend with Gary, the more I'm dialed into like helping people build their personal brands. So like, how do you think about your personal brand and why does it matter? A lot of people think, oh, well, personal branding is about self-promotion. No, what I learned from Gary is that personal branding is about leadership. It's about how do you, you know, tell the story of your business through the eyes of the person creating it and managing it and leading it. So think about your guys' behavior. Like, would you like to see the behind the scenes of a company? Like, how do they make the secret sauce? The behind the scenes footage of any event is the most exciting footage to watch. Like, do you want to watch how Oprah interviewed, watch Oprah's interview with Barack Obama? Or do you want to see the behind the scenes where they did this technology and they were in green screens and it looked like they were in living room, but they were in two separate cities? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people like to, that's the personal brand. Like, you can see how the story behind the story is the most exciting part. So he's taught me a lot about that. Like, people care to hear about what does it take to build a business? What does it take? What are the trials and tribulations? What is the hard stuff that you don't see? You know, all these entrepreneurs that are out there building businesses, especially those that are building businesses during a pandemic, like, they're superheroes. Like, you really need to think about building a personal brand as one of the core pillars of your marketing strategy. Don't just go and say, we need to have a communications person or a PR person or a marketing person be in charge of marketing the company. Every single person in the organization is an ambassador for that brand. So internal communications matters. The CEO's activities matters. The head of any director of any company, they could be participants. One of the things that Vayner that they did was GE, they used all their GE employees to help like post things on their LinkedIn page. Like, instead of hearing from one person, why don't you hear about all the different people that work in a company? Like, wouldn't you guys be fascinated to see behind the scenes of what happens at Pfizer when they're trying to get this vaccine out? Like, that's like the personal brand of like the people behind the scenes bringing that to life. I think for me, that'd be a fascinating story to learn and to watch.
I love that. I was always the kid that wanted to watch those videos of how they made crayons. So exactly. You have a great podcast where, you know, as you're talking to people, it feels like you're going behind the scenes. You know, you're not seeing it in video, but I love the podcast thing. The podcast is called Savvy Talk, and I want to make sure everyone finds out about it. So I'm going to put the link in chat. There you go. It's kind of a long link, but that goes to Amazon, to the Savvy Talk podcast that Maha does.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast was just to share stories of like, what do you do if you want to build your personal brand? How do you do media relations if you don't have money to hire an agency? What are some of the things, I interview some CEOs of some companies that they have gone through, and what can we learn from that? Like, every story is different. So there's just like sharing that. I love how podcasts are free. Anyone can download them. You can listen to them anywhere and on any podcast player. So it's been something that I usually start my day listening to podcasts. I like the ability to go out for a nice walk, especially today. The weather was really nice to put a podcast on it and take a walk. It's really, it's easy to consume. It's easy to digest, and you can get instant feedback as well from your listeners through the podcast as well.
You're talking about that idea of building personal brand, and you know, one of the things that people think about sometimes is creating a podcast. Why did you create Savvy Talk?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So some people are really comfortable doing different things. So some people love to write. So they'll do a blog post on LinkedIn, or they'll write really long copy on Instagram, which, by the way, performs very well, by the way. And some people love doing YouTube videos. Some people like being on camera with their phone and shooting live. I'm comfortable in audio. I'm comfortable in that format, and I like storytelling in that format. I like recording. I don't have to worry about what do I look like? What does my hair look like? I don't have to worry about the lighting, the makeup, the editing. Like, an audio format is a simple format. And when you're coming to do something that any of you guys are passionate about, whether it's yoga or photography or making jewelry or designing things, try to do something that you consistently can do, that you love to do, that's easy for you. Because if it feels like a lot of effort, it feels like you're going to be overthinking like every single detail, then you're not going to do it regularly. And the key to having good communications is being consistent and being consistent with it. And so you want something that's going to be natural for you. If it seems like a high mountain to climb, you're just going to go, oh my God, I have to sit and record videos. That's so painful. And then I have to edit them. And what if I don't like it? And what about the lighting? There's always going to be some excuse. So really thinking about how you guys can, create content in a format that you feel comfortable with. And for me, that was podcasting.
That seems, I like that. I hate video. So love that idea.
I mean, look at the way, like, Zooming, they're saying that, like, it's, people don't like to see themselves on camera all day. They're not used to it. Like a lot of students, not college students, but like K through 12, like they're struggling with, like, how do I speak up and how do I see myself all the time? And we're not used to it. And so you always have to think about, the visual aspect of doing your job. Like, how are you showing up physically, and now we're all forced to be on camera all the time.
Mike Beck from the St. Paul Saints spoke with us earlier today, and one of the things he said was that we all have to kind of create a set, like what's behind you and what's your lighting and your sound and all that, and we didn't used to have to think about things like that.
Yeah, actually, I kind of like when I see like the news anchors on TV and like we're in their kitchen. Like it feels personal. It feels authentic. It's like they don't need all the hair and makeup and all that kind of stuff. It's like, really, let me see what your kitchen's really like, and see what your house is like. This is my living room and this is my kitchen.
There's the kitchen. Oh, beautiful. So I have to ask you about this one. You have history with a company that a lot of people in the meeting today will have heard of, Google. Could you talk about your role at Google MENA and how that helped you develop?
Yeah. So it's funny. I joined Google. I accepted the job at Google the day the revolution broke out in Egypt. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was like protests in Tahrir Square, and people were out in the streets for 18 days. And I was like almost from day one, like doing crisis communications. It was Google is everything you think it is on TV and movies. Everyone is young and vibrant and smart as hell. Like you are working with the smartest people on the planet, because getting into Google is very difficult. They have a very rigorous process to get interviews and to get into the company. Their headquarters is, a campus. It's a college campus dream come true, where everything you have is available to you 24 hours a day, almost. Like if you want to get food, or you want to get fresh things from the farmer's market, or you want to get a haircut, or your dry clean, or free frozen yogurt, or they have like, I think it was like 28 different types of foods you can pick in their cafeteria. They make it easy for you to, like, live at work and to like be able to be productive in your job. Google's a tech company, but they're also an advertising company. So, when I was there, we were launching YouTube in the Middle East. We were launching Google Maps in the Middle East. It was the first time that a lot of these products were coming to the market. I think one of the biggest challenges that we were trying to do for Google is even though it was in the Middle East, in Egypt, in Dubai, in Saudi, all these countries, a lot of people don't speak online in Arabic. They speak online in English. And so they would Google things in English and look up YouTube videos in English. And so we were challenged with, like, how can we get more Arabic content on the internet? If you want to be relevant to people, you have to speak their language. So how do we create content in the language? And whose responsibility is it to upload content in Arabic on the internet? Is it the responsibility of the users or Google? And so we spent a lot of time telling people, upload your books, upload your videos, everybody tweet in Arabic, everybody write emails in Arabic. There was like a big disconnect, because the minute people got access to the internet, they were only doing it in English. And so that was like a really big challenge. And there, Arabic is the fastest growing language on the internet today, but they're still trying to get more people. Most people don't. Their first, even though they speak Arabic, their first inclination is to tweet in Arabic or English, or search in YouTube in English. And so, like, really teaching people, put the tags in Arabic and make sure that you're using the language. So that was like one of the big challenges that we worked on when I was there. And, one of the programs that we wanted to help, that I did, because I was in charge of communications, was how do we become a resource for journalists? So journalists teaching them how to use Google's tools. So I created something called the Google Media Academy, and we trained more than 6,000 journalists. There's a lot of journalists in the Middle East. On how to use Google. Like if you're working on a story, how to use it for search. If you want to embed a video in a story, how do you do that? If you want to use maps and the data visualization in your story, how do you do that? So we were spending a lot of time, at least I was, helping educate the press on how Google could help you do your job. And a lot of media organizations weren't investing in training journalists and giving them access to tools, and they have limited budgets and limited staff. So, we played a role in help train and upskill from a tech standpoint a lot of the media organizations how to go live from your phone. This is back 2010. 2011, 2020, like these aren't days where people were working from home and had access to the internet, but we knew that the power of the phone to be a broadcaster through live events. There wasn't Instagram Lives back then. There wasn't Twitter, wasn't live at the time. Like there were a lot of things that weren't live, but we were helping them figure out how to do that using some of the apps that were available at the time.
So do you have a home in Dubai now?
I don't have a home in Dubai now. I moved in March, but I have a home in Egypt.
Oh, that's wonderful. There's a question that came in on Padlet. What took you to Egypt? Was it your position with Google?
No, I moved to Egypt in 1997. So I was born and raised in Mankato. I lived there. I lived in the US until I was 27. I moved in 1997 to Egypt because my mom and dad, my dad, who was at Mankato State for almost 40 years, my mom and dad wanted to move back to Egypt and just live the retired life in Egypt and semi-retired life in Egypt and go back to like warmer weather and to be with family. And so I moved back with my mom and dad, mostly because my mom had multiple sclerosis and I was taking care of her. So I moved back for personal reasons, just to be with my family. And then ended up working for a big media mogul in the Middle East, and then did several jobs before joining Google. And then obviously I ran my own business. I ended up wanting to start my own company. After working for this media mogul and I built Weber Shandwick in the Middle East. Weber Shandwick is a big PR firm. I was like, wow, I don't need to be making money for other people. I can build my own business, and I'm the one who has the expertise. So why don't I try to start my own company? And I had no idea how to write a company or like how to do HR or accounting. I'm like, that's fine. I'll figure it out. I'll just hire the right people who can help me build the business, and ended up starting my own business in 2004, which I have till today.
That's awesome. I love that attitude of, I don't know everything I need to know, but I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah, you have to just start. Like, I think sometimes like you have to take a calculated risk. Like you're not going to know until you try. It's just like getting on a bike. Like someone can sit and tell you how to ride a bike, but unless you get on it, you're not really going to know. So you have to get on and you have to wobble and you have to find your footing and you have to find the right way to get, to move forward. But I think it's hard. Like what I know now, I know now what I did not know then. Like you don't know what you don't know. So it's just hard to like understand, but like you just got to push through. Like if you believe in yourself, all I can tell you guys is invest in yourself, believe in yourself, because no one's going to build your dreams for you. You really got to do it for yourself. Like even I love all the work I'm doing with Gary, and I love what he stands for and I love what he does, but I also I'm like so passionate about communications and helping people on the comm side. And that's not a competing interest with my work with Gary. It's just a different passion that I have, that I want to just help people learn how to communicate better and learn all the different playbooks, the Gary playbook, the Netflix playbook, the Google playbook. What is common about these working with these big companies and teams? And it has to do with like, how am I creating value? What's the story I want to tell? How am I focusing my efforts on really what matters? And then at the end of the day, making sure that you are always trying to raise the bar, always trying to like do something better than you did yesterday.
Those two themes that you mentioned about creating value. You talked about that earlier today too. And then good storytelling. Could you talk a little bit more about those two things, about this idea of like, how do you mentioned with Gary that you went in and you learned about the people that were there. You gathered lots and lots of information. You listened a lot. But could you talk a little bit more specifically to, especially all the students here, about what are some of the things that they can do to help bring value as they head out, into the work world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot about like, so I mean, I wrote this article, you guys can Google it, for Entrepreneurship magazine like a couple months ago, about what does it mean to like to be a value officer or to add value to somebody. And I think at the end of the day, it's about like when you're trying to define an equation between you and another party, don't think about what's valuable for you and what you want. Think about how you can add value to them. So if I'm thinking about my relationship right now with Yvonne, about what she wants to do for, today's event, I have to find out what's important to her. Like, what is of value to her? What is worthy? What's the worth? Doesn't come from what I think is cool. It's what she thinks is important. So think about that with an employer, with your family members, with people that you work with. Like, find out what is that value equation, what's important to them, and then do that. And always make sure that you are focusing on adding value to the other person, because then they won't ever like get rid of you, or they won't ever want to live without you, or they'll think, okay, this person is creating so much value for me in my business, I want to work with them for a long time. It creates that what we call stickiness. Like, the reason why I will stay working with you is because you add so much value to me. You're always trying to go above and beyond. You're always trying to make sure that in order for me to win, I want them to win first. And that's the kind of the I think of, when I came to talk to Gary about like, oh, what should my title be? And I'm like, Chief Value Officer. And like, that isn't a title in many companies. And I'm like, he's like, why do you want that? And I said, well, because I always think about my job will be to add value in anything that I do. Am I adding value to your brand? Am I adding value to the company? Am I adding value through relationships? Am I adding value through sales? Am I adding value by training somebody, by contributing more, by teaching somebody something? Like, always think about what's that value equation and how you can add it. The second thing is, a lot of people have, I know there's a really famous book by Adam Grant called Give and Take. Like, are you a giver or are you a taker? Are you always the person sucking things out of people, or are you the person giving stuff to people? And so that matters in business, and it matters in your personal relationships too. So be that person who's always the person who's giving more to the other party in a way that you think is the most valuable for them. I always talk too about, before I can add value to you or to others, I have to add value to myself. So I invested in myself. I took a lot of online training. I've, worked hard at my job. I've built a good reputation doing what I do. That saying, like, put on your mask before you do the passenger sitting next to you on a plane. It's like, add value, invest in yourself so that you can add value to others. Like, you're of no value to somebody if you don't know how to do anything. So what's that one or two or three things that you think, okay, this is what I'm really good at. I'm really good at writing. I'm really good at project management. I'm really good at helping somebody listen to the other side. I'm really good at managing people. I understand how to, like, people's intentions. Those soft skills are really important in business. So find out what it is that you have invested in yourself in, that you know how to do. Like, I'm really good at understanding how to, empathize with employees. So maybe I should work in HR or internal communications. Or as an entrepreneur, I believe that my job will be to be like a leadership coach, helping people figure out what is it that their purpose, helping others, and what is the purpose of that business. So I think a lot about, I don't even remember the answer to the question where we started, but
You're talking about value.
Value.
And storytelling too.
Yeah. So, and think about storytelling. So, like, it's interesting. If you guys come to do interviews, I'd be interested to see if people ask you that question in an interview where they leave it open ended. And they're like, so what's your story? And the reason they're doing that is because they want to see, where are you going to take the conversation? Are you going to talk about yourself? Are you going to talk about an experience? Are you going to talk about others? People want to know, what's your story? Like, you guys want to know what my story is. Like, how did I get to work with Gary? And how did I come from Mankato to Dubai? Like, what's my story? Like, how do you end up in Minnesota during the pandemic after living in Dubai? Like, everyone wants to know what that story is. And I mean, I think if you guys think about your day to day, and like, you want to know the story about X, like, there's something you always want to uncover the story for. So companies, one of the things that I do a lot of work in is, I don't want companies to talk like companies. I want companies to talk like people. Like, tell a story of your brand. Tell the story of, like, if you were to see today a story of Coca-Cola and how they decided the shape of that bottle, That's not an old story. That's an interesting story. Instead of saying, oh, Coca-Cola makes bottles, like tell me the story about the bottle, the design, and like go a little bit deeper and paint a picture for the user, paint a picture for the consumer. Think about the things you guys like to follow on TikTok or on Instagram. What makes your thumb stop is an interesting story, right? It's something that captured your attention. And so you want to be a communicator that tells good stories because that will make people listen and that'll capture their attention.
I love that. It really is all about storytelling. I coach students on how to pitch, and it's all about a story, and it's as personal as you can make it, right? That's awesome. I've got another quick little poll to share with everyone. So let's see where everybody is today. So where are you all in the world right now? We were talking about
100% Mankato. Let's go. I was born in Mankato. That's my hometown. It means a lot to me. All right, Mankato, another place in Minnesota.
West was catching up there for a minute. I wanted to see if there's anybody in the Middle East, Asia, or Europe that was joining in. It looks like we have 2 in Asia. That's cool.
That's cool.
And other, I don't know where that is.
I want you guys to add me on LinkedIn or follow me on Instagram because I want to stay in touch with you guys. Definitely, please. Ooh, Jerusalem, Palestine. Nice.
Very cool.
Just seriously reach out to me. I mean it. I don't say it. I really want you guys to either tag me or say something so I can see you either on Twitter. My Twitter handle and my Instagram handle are the same. I'm putting them in the chat.
Here's the results so y'all can see.
And then that's my
mixture of people all over.
Cool.
One of the things that I was thinking about, as we were talking was, we have such a global, economy and a global communication going on. All of us online, folks here from Jerusalem and all over the world, kind of looking at something that's going on in Mankato and in Minnesota. How can small businesses or new businesses, people that are starting something up, what are some advice you might have for them in terms of thinking globally? Maybe connections or things that you'd encourage that they would explore as they think about that?
Yeah, so I mean that's the beauty of the internet is like you don't have to just sell to people in Mankato. You can sell to anyone around the world. Obviously, you need to have mechanics to ship and to market to them, but you can build your brand awareness and get fans from anywhere or get followers from everywhere and get customers from anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like the beauty of how the internet works in terms of a small business. But I would go back to invest in really good social media channels because that's the main communications piece. Make sure that you don't have to be on every single platform. Like depending on what your business is, should you be on LinkedIn or Twitter, or are you a visual business? You need to be on Instagram, even TikTok. Like TikTok and LinkedIn are two big business channels, believe it or not, that Gary talks about a lot because they have such explosive and organic growth happening right now. And I don't know if you guys are on Triller or know anything about, there's another one, Parlor, which is coming up and running and doing things that a lot of people are interested in. But I think you really need to think about having a solid communication strategy to reach customers. So the internet is for free. There are tons of videos on YouTube, and even just go to Gary's website and download like how he does his pillar content of how to be really good at posting, how to buy media, if you want to buy media to promote your business, but really take advantage of all the free tools that are online to learn how to get good at marketing. This is a skill you need to have for your life. It's not like everyone says, well, I don't have a business online, but you have your own social media channel. So you are a brand. You are a brand, whether you like it or not, if you have an Instagram account. What you post, the types of things you post about, it's telling a story. So think about how you should be, taking advantage of what's out there. If you have a small business, use your channels to tell your founder story, use your channels to get customers, use your channels to get investors, use your channels to recruit employees, and use your channels to retain employees. Really important. Like, you want to work for some place where A, they appreciate you, but B, you feel like you understand what's happening. It's really bad advice to have something go out to the market that your current employees don't know anything about. So make sure that that whole chain of internal and external is really balanced for you.
Awesome. We have a question from Padlet. What have been some challenges for you in starting your own business?
People, finding the right people. Finding the right people, trusting the right people, training the right people. Your business is your people. And so, you know, the communication stuff and my job and what I do and what, you know, I love to help clients with, that's the easy part. The hardest part is the people part. Like either keeping really good talent or training that talent, inspiring that talent, educating that talent, finding that talent to begin with. So, you know, that's why I'm like, anyone who's looking for a job, stay in touch with me. I'm always looking for people. And I always like to connect people. So if people need jobs and I know people who want, I like to make that connection because I know how hard it is to find people.
Definitely. I've had that experience too with my company. It's always hard to,
So hard.
well, it's hard to gauge. I mean, what techniques or ideas do you have as you're meeting someone new and you're considering them for a position? What kinds of things have you found to be successful in getting you that right person?
Well, one is that like you get to know the person because some people are really bad at taking tests and some people are really bad at interviews. But that doesn't mean that they're bad at what they do for their job, right? So like giving them a way to share what they do best, either show an example of work or show something that they're proud of. And it could be anything, like a project that they initiated, you know, so making sure that you don't have a cookie cutter approach to interviews and really focus on like reading that person that you're talking to and what is it that they're passionate about and let them talk about what they feel they can best articulate for themselves.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did research you and looked you up on LinkedIn in addition to some other things. But one of the things that I learned is that you follow Brene Brown, Tony Robbins, Mark Cuban, Rick Branson, along with a bunch of other wonderful names in leadership and entrepreneurship. Is there anybody that you're listening to or reading recently that might not be that famous, but you think that people in this meeting really should check them out?
Yes, I mean, I told this to my niece and nephew and they loved it. So you guys, you have to listen to this podcast called How I Built This with Guy Raz. So Guy Raz, I actually fangirled big time because I got to meet him last year. He has this podcast that talks about how people started their businesses. So how did Lululemon start? How did Warby Parker start? How did Five Guys start? Like these stories are fascinating. And you guys, every single episode is better than the next. So go back and listen to like everything. They have like Burt's Bees and if you guys know Milk Bar, like my niece is a baker. And so that's a story about how Christina built her bakery business and now it's like a hot, you know, chain. Anyways, I love that podcast. I love Guy Raz. I love his storytelling. He has a phenomenal voice. So you guys should go download that and just binge it because you're going to love it and you're going to thank me. And then he wrote a book. And when he came out to do the book, he wanted to promote the books. I'm like, you have to, you know, do an interview with Gary. And so I got them both together and that was super fun to get to do that. And he gave me a copy of the book in advance so I can read it and brief Gary. But it was Guy Raz is How I Built This by far, like one of the most, if you're an entrepreneur, it's like a must listen and it's an easy listen. And you guys, trust me, it's good.
Wonderful. That's a great recommendation. So for all of you that are in the meeting, you can share podcasts, blogs, books that you recommend too. You can put them on Padlet or put them in chat. Things related to marketing, branding, leadership, entrepreneurship. In case you have some great ones. I see Lindsay's really into Guy too.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's awesome. And he's such a nice guy. Like I don't know how if you guys go back and look, but I posted like some like pictures about it and videos and it was fun. The other book that I just read, and I actually got to meet him, which was crazy, was Matthew McConaughey's new book, Green Lights.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a memoir that he was doing. And then at the very end, he interviewed Gary. And at the very end, everyone got off. I'm like, hey, Matthew, would you do me a favor? And he's like, yeah, I'm like, my niece really likes that movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And so he made a funny video for her and made her day. She was embarrassed, I'm sure. But anyways, Guy Raz, if you're an entrepreneur, it's like a must read.
That's awesome. Well, let's find out if we have any entrepreneurs here with us today. And you notice that none of mine are really no.
Yeah, but a lot of of people have ideas of things that they want to do, especially like out of this pandemic. Like if you thought of something that should be done, like, you know, curbside delivery businesses, or if you wanted to create an app, like one of the things, like, let's say, for example, they're open now. Thank God. I was going to die if the governor killed like hair salons and nail salons. But like, you know, what do they do if they have to close and they can't, you know, pivot their business? So if they were selling like shampoos and combs and stuff like that, they could put on an online store and sell things just to generate income. So like thinking about how you guys can help that. So I would be curious. No, but the future is full of surprises. Yes. Amazing. Yes. You're working on a business idea. So when you have a business idea and you want to pitch it to an investor, I think one of the interesting things that you need to think about is like the founder story. Like people invest in people. They don't invest in ideas, they invest in people. So if you guys don't watch Shark Tank, you'll see like people invest in, like, a lot of the feedback that they give is like they like the investor, they like the founder, they like the story that they're telling, they're passionate about it. So always think about the founder story is one of the most important stories. Oh, Atomic Habits is super good. Love that book. It's basically about like your day is built on small habits and doing those small habits consistently. And so it's a very, very good book. I read that too. I read a lot of books and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I do audiobooks, by the way. Like sometimes I want to just have something to listen to. And so I'm a big audio person.
Me too. But whenever I'm walking or biking, I'm listening to audiobooks.
Yeah.
I don't talk to my husband. I'm just like plugged in. I probably should talk to him more, right? Hey, you know, we use this phrase, entrepreneurial thinking, a lot. And I've found that people have lots of different definitions for what they think that means. Yeah. What does entrepreneurial thinking mean to you?
Entrepreneurial thinking means that you have to be not afraid of failure and walking away if something doesn't work, and don't be married to your ideas because not everything's going to work and you need to be pivoting a lot. And entrepreneurial means that you're willing to let things go. Like you're willing to throw up 3 balls and have 2 drop, right? Because not everything is going to go exactly to plan. So companies really have to be beholden to investors and have to be beholden to shareholders and how things go. Entrepreneurs can have a little bit more wiggle room to like test and learn and try things out. And I think that entrepreneurial thinking that a lot of businesses want, they want them to be scrappy. They want them to be agile. They want them to be a little bit more risk taking because they think that there might be a bigger reward. So that's my definition of how I think about entrepreneurial thinking. And it's about giving yourself, you know, trusting yourself that you'll try things and not every one of them is going to work.
That's awesome. I want to open up to some other questions. I have a few in reserve, but I want to open up to everyone else who's here the opportunity to chat with you. So if you have a question for Maha, please use the raise hand in Zoom. You can click on participants and click on raise hand, and I will unmute you and you can go ahead and just chat.
I was hoping Kelly would come in so we can wish her a happy birthday. Nobody has a question for me?
There's got to be questions out there. People just don't want to be the first.
Skylar Meyer has a clapped hand. I'm trying to see. Anybody questions? What is the thing that you guys, what are some of the, I actually have a question. What are some of the companies you guys think are doing a good job during the pandemic? In the chat.
Anybody? You can use chat if you want to. If you prefer not to be.
Yeah. If you guys
don't have to turn on video if you want to ask a question.
Target, yes, Target. How do you deal with self-doubt? Okay, well, good. Best Buy adapted quick. Amazon. Okay, yeah. I was thinking when I was thinking about the vaccine, they should just let Amazon distribute it. They're all trying to figure out how they're going to distribute it through all these things. Zoom did a great job. mRNA, what's that? What's Mom? I don't know what that is. Vaccine. Oh, vaccine. I love that idea. Go Amazon. I don't know. It's like we should have been voting through like an app, and then we can distribute our vaccine. Like we do everything else on our phones. Why don't we do that? Okay, so how do you deal with self-doubt? Like all the time. It happens to me all the time. Like you just have to, you know, sometimes one of my friends said to me, she's like, every time you think that you can't do something, and she's like, go back and read your CV, you know, go back and give yourself a dose of like, listen, like I moved to Egypt. I didn't hardly know Arabic, even though I'm 100% Egyptian. My parents were Egyptian. I mean, I went to Egypt on vacation. Like I didn't feel like I was Egyptian. And so I really had to like basically put myself on the deep end of the pool and figure it out. And so, and I think about like, I can't do this, or it's like, I'm never going to be able to move to Egypt and build a career. I didn't think I'd be able to do it. And I did it. And then I was like, oh, I'm never going to leave Egypt. I feel so comfortable here now. And Google's like, you have to move to Dubai. And I really didn't want to move to Dubai. Like that was the last place on earth. I'm like, I'll accept the job, but I don't want to move to Dubai. It's very plastic. It's very artificial. It doesn't feel like me. It's too shiny. It's too, I mean, Dubai is one of the best places on the planet. I'm telling you, you guys want to go there. It is not anything that I thought it was. So like, I always think about that when I self-doubt myself, like, how am I going to go work for Gary and sell advertising? I'm a PR person. I'm like, well, I didn't want to move to Egypt and I made it. I didn't want to go to Dubai and it was great, you know. And then I moved back to the US after being gone for 23 years. And I'm like, okay, this is going to suck. I'm not going to be good at this. I don't know any business people. And now I'm like, I'm talking to Target and Gatorade and Nike. And like, you just have to put your head down and silence that self-doubt in your head and focus on something else. And it's just a matter of drowning one voice out with the louder voice of saying, you know what, I'm going to try. And when you start trying, it's just like working out. Like I hate working out and it's like such a pain. I'm like, but you know, when I do it, then I feel okay. And I feel, oh, it wasn't so bad. Like I'm risk averse until I'm risk positive. And then I'm like, okay, let's do that again. That wasn't so bad.
I love that. I love that's great advice. Thinking of it like working out. Skylar, I've set it so you can unmute if you want to and ask your question yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, I'm going into more of like the fitness field. That's where what we're starting a business in right now. And just as a woman going into those kinds of fields that are predominantly male, how do you stand your ground and not get walked all over without coming off as hostile or cold in that environment?
Yeah. I can't tell you, I've been, you know, women who are assertive or want to stand up for themselves are often called aggressive or bossy. I mean, I have had that a lot, and especially in the Middle East where there's a lot of male dominated industries and I'm a female. Oftentimes I was the only woman in the room. Often there wasn't any like female heads of companies in the Middle East. I was managing director of a company. I was like, oh, she's wearing the pant. Like it's not something, obviously now it's more common for female founders of businesses, but back in 2000, 20 years ago, it wasn't common. And I just think, you know, have the confidence that you know what you're doing and just lace everything with an enormous amount of empathy, an enormous amount of, you know, compassion for the other side if they don't welcome you or they don't understand you, and it's more about them than it is about you. But when you're entering an industry like the fitness industry, standing your ground, just like know your stuff, be polite, be cordial, but also just don't apologize for who you are and don't apologize for what you know, because you bring a gift to the table and you're going to bring it whether they can accept it or not. And I think a lot of times, you know, I think men are getting so much better about this in business in general, of understanding everything. Like we're getting better in general about a lot of things. Like, you know, we all saw what happened with Black Lives Matter. And so now we understand, like, we need to be, you know, not this white fragility or this white privilege. Like sometimes we might say things that we don't think are offensive to other people, but they end up being offensive. So I think awareness is key. And then you do your part to say and do what you mean. Say it with a lot of empathy and kindness and hope that the other side can be accepting.
I love that. Sari has a question for you. Go ahead.
So you talked, by the way, thank you for being here and thank you for giving your insight and everything. My question is, so you talked about like when you started your business, what was your first gig? Like what was the first problem as a consultant that you solved?
Oh my God, that's a really good question. So, well, my first job, I remember my first job. I was working at this company in Mankato called CWC. It was called Clear with Computers, and it was a software company for people who wanted to build heavy duty trucks. So they get the software and they could design their truck. So like it was weird. Like, why am I working in like heavy duty truck industry? But it was customer service job, and so you learn how to like empathize with customers and They taught us like how to handle customer objectives. And it's back in the day, this is going to age me, but like when you're putting a disk in your computer and it's not working. And so you have to call customer support to get it fixed. That was my first real job. And then as a consultant, what was the first client that I served? I actually can't remember. I need to go back and look at that. But most of the stuff that I touched, and have you guys heard the show? What's that show with Olivia Pope? Scandal. Like they would call like Olivia Pope to like fix things. Like a lot of people like wanted me to be their fixer. Like if there was like somebody, if a CEO or a company was in hot water, like they would call me. They're like, Maha's the person. Like I became like a crisis communications person to the point where when Netflix, they came to ask me to do work for them, they said, oh, if we hire you, does that mean that we have like a scandal or a crisis that we're trying to fix? Because everyone knows you're like the ultimate fixer, like you can get anybody out of any problem. And I was like, no, I can build your reputation and brand in a good way. So I can't remember the first client I had as a company, but that's the second time someone's asked me. So I need to go back and look at my records.
Got a question from Padlet. How are you lifting up the women around you in addition to presenting at events like this? Thank you.
So that's a great question. I do a ton of mentoring. My assistant yesterday, she's like, the number of hours that I spend mentoring. So I had a session yesterday. I have another one tomorrow. I mentor a lot of different women and entrepreneurs in general, just to kind of help them find their voice, figure out how to build their personal brand, help them with what they need help with. Like I need help with public speaking, or I want to take some coaching classes with you on how I can be more articulate about some of my ideas. You know, especially in a world of Zoom, like you got to figure out how to rewire your communication skills. Like, how do you speak up? How do you manage up? How do you talk to your boss about your work? How do you talk to your professor about your paper? How do they get them to notice you when you're one of many squares? You know, it's not easy. And, you know, where are you looking? And are you not having the right eye contact? And how can you not be these persons that, you know, interrupts all the time, it's on the screen, but like you want to make sure that you are, you know, standing up and showing up and adding the value where you feel best you can do that. So I do a lot of mentoring to answer your question on that. Second thing is I hire a lot of women. Like I like to make sure that I give women opportunities for jobs and opportunities where they can do what they do best. And so that's kind of another thing as well.
I think that's awesome. As you look, you know, into the future and you're thinking about things that you're seeing, you're talking to so many influential and you know, folks who are on the front lines of a lot of things that are coming. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about things like artificial intelligence, blockchain, you know, these kinds of things that are coming along with all the stuff that we're experiencing because of the pandemic. And what sorts of opportunities and challenges do you see for, you know, 20 somethings that are graduating from college and heading out into the world?
Well, AI is not going to replace humans. I think I spent a lot of time, you guys can Google this guy. His name is Sebastian Thrun. He used to be the founder, he was one of the founding members of Google X, like Google's private lab where they come up with all these crazy ideas. And now he is the head of Kitty Hawk, that flying helicopter company, and Stanford University. He teaches and does this. He has a company called Udacity, which was a online platform because he thought, why should the people at Stanford be the only people who can take AI courses, like and be robotics? Because you guys know a lot of tech companies come out of California because of Stanford and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, long story short, he taught me a lot about what AI is and is not. And he said, it'll make room for it'll automate things that don't require creativity. So the creative industry will never die because that is something that humans have to do. AI will automate things, will make things more faster of jobs and tasks that don't require the human brain to be involved. So like, you know, automating legal agreements. So if you're about to be a lawyer in 20 years, there might be a system where it can automate the words and find out what things to do. Like there's certain industries that'll be impacted and certain industries that won't. And I just think everyone was afraid that the television would come in and ruin everybody. And then everyone thought, well, the internet will come in and ruin everybody. And it creates more opportunities. And then how we use them, I guess, you know, what if artificial intelligence can help us solve some of these diseases that kill a lot of our family members? I mean, that could be a breakthrough that we don't even know is available. So I guess the jury is still out to see any of the negative effects of it. I think a lot of people will be worried about it without knowing really what it can do.
your expertise with communications, with messaging, just seems particularly important right now as we look at, communications with news media and communications about elections and health protocols, and all that kind of stuff. Could you talk a little bit about, your own work or maybe work that you're seeing out there that you think is really amazing in that field in terms of those, those really impactful things that are going on right now?
I mean, I think we always have to put yourself in the shoes as the consumer. Like, what kind of stuff do you feel moves you, or what kind of stories do you think that you're seeing in the news that really are making you pay attention? Like, we're learning a lot about ourselves during COVID. We're learning a lot about restrictions and freedoms and what we are comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with, and in public safety and public health. And I liked, I don't know if you guys saw yesterday the governor's talk about, what's happening in Minnesota, but like he had good messaging and explaining things that's easy for somebody to understand. Whether we like the message or not is not the debate of this conversation. But like, I think he comes as, he's a teacher, so he understands like how to explain things. And I really think the simplicity of the language that matters, like how you say a message. Like I really watched him yesterday. He talked about how hard this is. Like, these are not easy decisions. Leaders will do things like that to show empathy and to make sure that they think, oh, we just didn't make this decision to screw your lives. So I think look at the words that leaders are using when they're talking about these things, even the environment, the camera, how they speak straight to the camera, versus being more polished. A lot of people like that authenticity in communications, and I don't think that's ever going to change. I don't think it's going to go back to the polished way of doing things. I also believe that when we think about what we're reacting to and what we're turning off, is we don't want the noise. We don't want to hear, people fighting. We don't want to hear the negative stuff. We want to try to find out what is the thing that is the essential information. There's a really good book, now that I just mentioned that word, called Essentialism. That is my favorite book on the planet. If you guys get one book and read it, so listen to Guy Raz's podcast and buy the book called Essentialism. It's like, what really matters? What's essential for you to be doing? What's essential for you to be spending your time on? Like, how much time do we waste stressing over something we probably needed not to be stressing over? And how do you spend your day is what dictates the quality of your life. And so how do you spend your day listening to messages that really are impacting you? Like, I remember living in Dubai, and like every day I was getting on the news and I would hear like every day just really bad news. I'm like, oh, why don't I just turn it off? And it improved the quality of my life significantly, right? I would just take a dose of it instead of like an 8-hour dose of it, So I think you guys need to think about auditing and inventorying your life and focusing on the messages that you're exposing yourself to. I do like to sit on TikTok. It's entertaining. It's fun. I learn something all the time, whether it's cooking or food or fashion. Like I like to consume it, but I don't consume it all day. So just like making sure that you're thinking about what works for you and what's essential in your life, and where do you spend your time. And one of the things, and Gary talked about this today on a call earlier, about like, if you want to have your own business and you want to be your own boss and you really love business and marketing and entrepreneurship, whether it's your full-time job or your side hustle, where are you spending your time nights and weekends? Are you watching 8 hours of Netflix? Like, then you're not going to get your business off the ground. So auditing how you're spending your time. Yes, chill out. Yes, watch Queen's Gambit or The Crown or whatever you guys like to watch. But don't be spending all your time doing that. If you really have a passion for something you want to focus your time on, and you really believe in like starting your own essential oils business or your own bakery or picking up over the holidays to go decorate and gift wrap for people, like whatever it is, then you need to figure out where are you spending your time and make sure you're spending it doing the most important thing.
So critical, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Sierra has a question for you. Go ahead, Sierra.
Okay. Hi, Maha. So switching gears quite a bit here. I am actually a public business librarian in Indiana. I went to school up in St. Paul, so I'm familiar with the area. So I'm actually just kind of wondering sort of ways that I can sort of personal brand the library as sort of a center for business resources. We are currently working with quite a few local organizations, but other ways that I can sort of reach entrepreneurs and the public in general right now during this time to kind of support them outside of maybe just like a university setting.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, build a lot of content about love of books, love of reading. Recommend things that people should be coming to the library for. Recommend like this is a place where people can come to work, people can come to read, people can get books. Like all the things that you want to promote, just start telling that story. Talk about the people. What do people that work at the library do? Like that's an interesting story. What goes on behind the scenes between closing hours and opening hours at the library? What kind of stuff are you guys doing in there? Like I think there's so much content you guys can create, and maybe TikToks out of some of the stuff that's happening with some of the content of the books of the library, and like asking people to recommend things and talk about why do they like to come to the library. So getting content and filming when people come to the library. I don't know what your COVID restrictions are, but like show the people that are working there and post like really cool shots of their workstations, like show us where you're working from today. I can go on for hours and hours, but really try to personalize it and show people. Don't just show books, don't show the building, show the people behind the brand.
Yeah, that's a really awesome idea. Thanks so much, especially right now, whenever we get shut down with COVID. People don't really know, what is our work if we aren't, manning the stacks if it's closed. So that's a perfect idea. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a call. I'm on an esports. I'm starting you guys very soon. I'm going to be announcing, if you want to be a part of it, I'm going to announce it. I'd love you to, a Minnesota Esports Alliance. So I'm really into esports and gaming. So we're sort of creating like an American Chamber of Commerce for esports. And it's only going to be all the biggest companies and brands and people that have to do with esports. And it started 2 minutes ago. So I need to jump off to get onto this. But I'm really, really grateful for all your time. And I mean it, DM me, post me, tweet me, whatever, send me a message. I'm here and I'd love to come back and speak again to all of you. Yvonne, thank you so much for helping me be a part of this special day. And Liz, please tell Kelly that I said happy birthday. And I wanted to tell everyone from Mankato, big love to you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maha. That was wonderful. So
Thank you, Maha.
For those still on the call, just wanted to let you know right after this at 6:30 tonight is our next Global Entrepreneurship Week event. It's called Big Ideas, how to enter and win venture competitions. So if you have an idea that you're working on, and some of you had indicated that you are, that will be a great opportunity for you to learn more about how to enter and win venture competitions, including the Big Ideas Challenge that's coming up in April at MSU. Tomorrow we have 2 events for Global Entrepreneurship Week. One is a pitch competition. Give 5 minutes of your time, apply and pitch, and you could win $250. So it'll be kind of fun. And I wanted to give a thank you to Liz at the Women's Center for our partnership on the Women in Business Leadership Series. Liz, did you want to say anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, first of all, I'm furiously taking notes over here for the way the Women's Center can better tell our story. But I am so grateful to you, Yvonne, for the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and our partnership. I think that if anybody is in the my gears are turning about a business, have a meeting with Yvonne, because she's going to get you brainstorming and she's going to get you a task list. So you're going to be ready to rock and roll. So definitely do that. The Women's Center, we're happy to continue offering support to students. So as you're kind of making your way through the final weeks of the semester, please know if you need a pep talk, if you need a kick in the butt, whatever it's going to take to get you through to December 10th, just let us know. Our email address is wcenter@mnsu.edu. We're also here. We've done, what do we call it? I can't remember, but it's basically student success coaching that we do, and we can get in your face about it if that's helpful to you. So keep that in mind as we continue this online environment. I want to take the opportunity really quickly to invite you to take the lead on creating the spring edition of the Women in Business series. Really, we're looking for a couple of people who are excited to cultivate this series into something that is assisting you with your own business goals, answers the questions that you have, and allows you to make the connections that are meaningful for you. Yvonne and I can come up with ideas all day long. Well, Yvonne can come up with ideas all day long, and I'll agree to them. And but we want to hear from you about what it is that's important to you and what you're looking for. So if you're interested in being a a part of that in really taking the lead on this series, we would love to hear from you. Again, you can email wcenter@mnsu.edu, and I'll make sure that I share it with Yvonne. On behalf of the College of Business, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and the Women's Center at Minnesota State University Mankato, it's been a delight. I have learned a ton about business, which I sorely knew little to nothing about through this series. And I have had just the thrill of seeing the incredible business leaders that are coming up in our own community. And that's all of you. So hang in there. School will wrap up. And I'm just excited for the opportunities in front of you.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for coming.